So we stopped our discussion in the earlier class with regard to the different lab tests that we'll be conducting for determining the coefficient of permeability or hydraulic conductivity value. So we said we have two different lab tests that we'll be coming across with. One is constant head test and the other is falling head test. So as I told you already, like constant head test is particularly in the case when we have what is called as coarse grain soil existing. And in the case of constant head test, what we do is we maintain a constant total head difference throughout the test. And accordingly, we'll try to estimate the coefficient of permeability of that particular soil sample, what you have used in the test. And in the case of falling head test, initially we have certain total head difference because of which the flow is getting initiated. And later, with increase in time, the total head difference between upstream and downstream continues to slowly decrease because of the small interconnected void spaces that exist in the fine grained soil sample. Okay, that is in the case of falling head test. Okay, so let us start looking at what is your constant head test. The permeability test is a measure of the rate of flow, what is happening through your soil sample. So in this test, water is forced by a known constant pressure. So when I say a total head difference is constantly maintained between upstream and downstream, so that constant pressure head into the corresponding unit weight of water, if I multiply, I'll be getting what is called as your pressure with which the water is trying to flow through the pore spaces of the soil sample. That is what we call it as your pore pressure through a soil sample of known dimension, and the rate of flow is determined. So ultimately what we try to do from this particular test is we allow the water to pass through the soil sample because of the constant total head that you are maintaining between the upstream and downstream. So due to that total head difference that you are maintaining between the upstream and downstream, the water starts slowly passing through your soil sample. And that soil sample, what we should first ensure is soil sample should be fully saturated, because in order to ensure the Darcy's law is valid, so your soil sample should be fully saturated. Through that fully saturated soil sample, the flow starts taking place. Okay, as the water is trying to flow through the soil sample over a certain period of time, we'll try to measure how much is the quantity of water which is trying to flow through the soil sample, which we call it as the discharge. Once we know how much is the amount of discharge that took place through the soil sample over a certain period of time, then what I can just try to think of is, okay, within a particular period of time t, the amount of water which got discharged through your soil sample is what I can call it as your amount of water which seeped through your soil sample. Discharged is nothing but seeped through your soil sample. So that is your capital Q value. That is your quantity of discharge is capital Q. And once I know how much is the quantity of discharge over a certain period of time, then capital Q by that time, if I divide, I'll be getting what is your small q. That is nothing but flow rate. So I can get what is my flow rate. And once I know what is my flow rate, how do I write down flow rate? Flow rate is nothing but velocity into velocity with which the flow is happening through the complete cross-sectional area of the soil sample. We generally take what is called as a cylindrical soil sample in a cylindrical mold in the test. Okay, once I say it's a cylindrical soil sample, so it's a constant diameter is what you know for that soil sample which you have considered in the test. The diameter of the soil sample is known. Height of the soil sample, or in fact I can say the length of the soil sample what you are using in the test is also known. So I can now move ahead in understanding what is the cross-sectional area of the soil sample as the diameter of the soil sample is known. Then what else is not known to me? It is the velocity. With what velocity the flow is happening. How can I write down the velocity? Velocity is nothing but, according to Darcy's law, velocity is nothing but coefficient of permeability into hydraulic gradient. Here ultimate objective in our discussion is to calculate that coefficient of permeability only. That's the K value. Okay, so V is nothing but K into I, where K is the unknown. Now how do I write down that hydraulic gradient? What is hydraulic gradient? The total head difference between upstream and downstream. How much total head difference are we maintaining between the upstream and downstream? So that total head difference divided by what is the length of seepage happening through the soil sample. In fact, I can call that as nothing but the length of your soil sample, or rather the height of your soil sample in the case of this particular test. Okay, so total head difference, how much you are constantly maintaining throughout the test between upstream and downstream is known, and length, or in fact the height of the soil sample what you are using in the test is also known. So only unknown that you are going to be having is your coefficient of permeability of that particular soil through which the flow is taking place. So the constant head test is used primarily for coarse grained soils. This test is based on the assumption of laminar flow where K is independent of I. Why we are saying this K is independent of I? Because your hydraulic gradient, what we are trying to talk about, is relatively very less. Why we are saying hydraulic gradient is less? Because I is nothing but delta H by L. So your total head difference, what you are maintaining between upstream and downstream, is relatively as you are maintaining it constant, not varying with time. Okay, that's the reason we consider it. As the flow is continuous, this test applies a constant head of water to each end of the soil sample. So at any point, if you are looking at and if you are measuring your total head difference, the total head difference what you maintain throughout your test process with respect to that soil sample is constant. And the mold in which this soil sample is placed for determining the coefficient of permeability is what we call it as permeameter, the mold setup basically. So the device or the setup which is used for determining the coefficient of permeability of the soil, so that device is what we call it as permeameter. Okay, so this is the standard code according to which we are trying to discuss about your constant head test, that is ASTM, American Society for Testing and Materials. D2434 is the reference code what we are looking at, which has been referred to that of our IS code again. In this type of laboratory test setup, the water supply at the inlet is adjusted in such a way that the difference of head between the inlet and the outlet remains constant during the test process, which we have already talked about. After a constant flow rate is established, once we assume that constant rate of flow, continuously the same rate of flow is happening through the soil sample. That means once the test is started, do not start collecting the water at time t equal to 0 itself. Let the water, you allow the water to pass through that soil sample for some time. Then you start fixing up certain period of time and then collect your water which is trying to flow through the soil sample. Why initially we are allowing the water to pass through the soil sample means, in case by any chance if the soil is not fully saturated before you start your test, so by allowing the water to pass through that soil sample, you can ensure that soil becomes fully saturated. Then that particular soil sample is effectively used for carrying out your test. Okay, look at here. This is what I am calling it as my permeameter. It's nothing but your test setup mold, in which I am going to be placing your cylindrical soil sample. How to place the soil sample and all that, once you perform your test, you will be getting to know how is the soil sample placed and so on. Basically, we'll have a cylindrical tube, cylindrical mold of cross section. You'll be pushing that cylindrical mold into the soil sample, so that you collect your cylindrical soil sample into that particular mold. And at the bottom of the mold, you are going to be placing with what is called as a porous stone. Here, one porous stone. On top of the soil sample, you are going to be placing a porous stone, and followed by a filter paper on both the sides of the porous stone. On top of the porous stone and towards the bottom also, again we'll be placing what is called as a filter paper. The purpose of that filter paper and porous stone is to ensure that when the water particle is passing through the soil sample, water particle, sometimes what happens is, due to the seepage what is happening through the interconnected void spaces, when the water particle is trying to seep through the interconnected void space, sometimes there is a possibility that very fine grained particles like clay particles will also be carried away with your water particle. So in order to minimize that loss of soil particles along with the water which is trying to seep through the soil sample, so we are using what is called as filter paper. The purpose of porous stone is to allow the water to seep through small gaps or small openings which are available to that particular stone. So once the water is allowed to pass through, you can look at here. This is the upstream side with some water connectivity available. This is the downstream side of your soil sample with some water storage capacity till here on the downstream side. Upstream side, water storage or water tank with water level is available till here. So between the upstream and downstream, I have certain total head difference. Because of this total head difference H, the flow is happening through your soil sample, or in fact, I can also write it as delta H. Okay. So due to that total head difference, what you are constantly maintaining through your soil sample, continuous flow is happening through the soil sample. So once you ensure the soil is fully saturated, what I can do is on the downstream side, try to have a collecting chamber so that now whatever water that is coming out on the downstream side, you collect it in a measuring jar so that you can say how much water got collected over a certain period of time, T. It could be T minutes, T seconds, whatever it is. So over a period of time T, how much amount of water which got collected in that particular collecting tank or collecting jar. So capital Q here refers to how much water quantity got collected here in terms of volume. So is what I can substitute here, where capital Q, instead if I divide it with time, I can also write it as here small q, that is nothing but flow rate. So capital Q is nothing but small q into time, where small q is your area of cross section. What is this area of cross section? It's a cylindrical soil sample. So the cross sectional area of the soil sample is nothing but it is your capital A, and V indicates here discharge velocity or the average velocity with which the flow is happening through the soil sample. And how do we calculate this cross sectional area? We know the diameter of the soil sample which we have used in the test. So I can say what is the cross sectional area of the soil sample. And according to Darcy's law, velocity is nothing but K into I, and K is the unknown what we are looking at in calculation, and I is nothing but hydraulic gradient, which indicates your total head difference is H over what length the flow is happening through the soil sample. Water is entering into the soil sample here and coming out of the soil sample here. So what is that shortest distance the water particle is traveling means? It is nothing but it is equal to the length of the soil sample. Okay, so H by L indicates you what is called as your hydraulic gradient. So from this, if I try to rewrite my expression, so it is nothing but it is equal to K is equal to this Q, time goes on to the denominator, A goes on to the denominator, and K also goes on to the denominator. And in the process, if I start rewriting this I is nothing but H by L. So if I just try to rearrange my terms, I'll be getting the expression for determining the coefficient of permeability, or I can also write it as hydraulic conductivity. So K is nothing but Q into L by A into H into T. Q here indicates discharge, L indicates length of soil sample, or otherwise the length of seepage happening through the soil sample, and A, capital A, indicates the cross-sectional area of the soil sample. Small h indicates, or sometimes you'll also see delta H indicated. So that is indicating you what is the total head difference constantly maintained between the upstream and downstream of the soil sample. And T indicates the time over which you are collecting the water in your collecting jar. Okay. So all these particular data are known. So only the unknown what you have is your coefficient of permeability, which you can calculate for the soil sample that is used in the test. And that type of soil sample what we are using in this test is nothing but it's a coarse grained soil. As in the case of the coarse grained soil, you have relatively large void space existing. So rate of flow happening through the coarse grained soil is relatively high. So in order to ensure a proper continuity of flow is happening, that's the reason we are using what is called as a constant head throughout the test. In the case of fine grained soil, we'll not be talking about constant head requirement, because as the void size is relatively small, the amount of water which flows through the soil sample over a certain period of time is relatively less. So that is the reason why we do not constantly supply same amount of total head between upstream and downstream. We don't maintain the same total head difference between upstream and downstream in the case of falling head. So we initially provide with certain total head between upstream and downstream. Total head difference of something is certainly existing, so that no flow will be initiated through the soil sample. Due to that total head difference what you have, the flow will be static. And as the flow gets initiated through the soil sample, the water level on the upstream starts slowly coming down, and depending on how the water level is decreasing, we'll try to calculate the coefficient of permeability of the soil in the case of your falling head test. So whatever I have talked about is very much there in these slides. Okay. Next, moving on to your falling head test. That's the other type of lab test which is performed in the case of soils which has got low permeability. That's nothing but your fine grained soils. Relatively, this particular test is relatively used for less permeable soils. It could be silty soils or clayey soils. Water flows through the soil sample from a standpipe attached to the top of the cylindrical mold. Test setup, everything is going to be same, but to the top of your cylindrical mold in which you are placing the soil sample, you are going to attach what is called a small diameter tube. and water is going to be existing in that small diameter tube, and we'll try to see how the water level in that small diameter tube is falling over the change in time. Okay, change in time, how the level in that standpipe is trying to change, and accordingly we'll try to calculate the coefficient of permeability. The head of water changes with time as flow occurs through the soil. At different times, the head of water is recorded. So at time t equal to t1, what is the head available in that standpipe? At time t equal to t2, what is the head available in the standpipe? So according to that head levels, how the head level is varying in the standpipe over a time variation of t1 to t2, then we'll be able to calculate the K value. So we are going to be talking about a typical test setup, okay? So which looks like this. This is the test setup. More or less the test setup looks the same, but instead of having a continuous water supply from the top with a large diameter pipe, so we are going to have a smaller diameter standpipe, which we are having it here. Initially, let's say at time t equal to t1, the water level in that standpipe is still here. The downstream water level, what is available, is somewhere till here. And with increase in time, what happened is the water level in the standpipe started coming down, because in this test we are allowing the water level to fall. We are not maintaining the constant head difference between upstream and downstream. Okay, that is the main important. So I told you already, this is a porous stone soil sample, porous stone once again. Okay, just above this porous stone, sometimes we'll be having what is called as a filter paper. Below this porous stone, we'll be maintaining what is called as a filter paper, so that water enters through the porous stone, and through the filter paper it seeps into the soil sample. And while the water is coming out of the soil sample again, so water particle first enters into the filter paper, and that filter paper filters away all the fine grained particles which are trying to escape along with the water particle. And once the fine grained particles are not allowed to pass through the filter paper is as similar to that of your tissue paper. Okay, so once those only water grains, water particles are allowed to pass through the filter paper, so those water particles gets seeped through the small openings that are available for your porous stone. So from that openings, water will be getting drained out, onto the downstream side. Okay, so ultimately what I am trying to measure is over an increment of time t1 to t2, how is your head level? Let's say initially the total head difference between upstream to downstream is something h1 at time t equal to t1. At time t equal to t2, the total head difference between upstream and downstream, because now the upstream becomes here after time t equal to t2. Okay, so because of that at time t equal to t2, as the water level is dropping down till here, now what is that total head difference existing at time t equal to t2, which I am writing it as h2. Now what has happened with increase in time? What has happened with regard to the total head available? Total head available between upstream and downstream is decreasing with increase in time. Okay, I repeat, total head difference between upstream to downstream when the flow is taking place through the soil sample. So that total head difference is decreasing with increase in time. Okay, so that is something what is very important for us to understand. Now, in similar way, let me write down the expression for calculating your coefficient of permeability as like we have represented earlier. But here, a slight difference in the approach what we are going to be dealing with in writing down the expression for flow rate. Generally, how do we write down the flow rate? Flow rate, the rate with which the flow is happening into the soil sample, is nothing but the rate with which the flow is coming out of the soil sample, because as the flow is continuous through the soil sample, with whatever rate the flow enters into the soil sample, with the same rate the flow has to come out of the soil sample. Now, what is the rate with which the flow is entering into the soil sample? If I want to understand, so how do I write down flow rate? Flow rate is nothing but cross-sectional area into velocity with which the flow is happening. Through what cross-sectional area you are measuring the flow rate entering into the soil sample? With reference to that of the cross-sectional area of the standpipe. Okay, so this is the cross-sectional area of the standpipe through which the flow is what you are trying to measure to understand how much flow is entering into the soil sample. Okay, so I can now understand that flow rate entering into the soil sample is nothing but the cross-sectional area of the water available in this standpipe into with what velocity? Okay, with what velocity? So velocity here is nothing but drop down in your water level. I repeat, drop down in your water level with change in time. Okay, so what is happening with increment in time? Let's say something dt is the increment in time. Due to that increment in time dt, what has happened to the head level is head got decreased from h1 to h2, which I can write it as, let's say, dh as something delta h. But that dh or delta h, we are going to be representing it as a negative value. Okay, why is it represented as a negative value? Because the total head difference is a decremental one with an increment in time. That's the reason you can see. Okay, so minus here coming because of the total head difference, which is dropping with increase in time. This is the rate with which the water is trying to flow into the soil sample. Now, what is the rate with which the water is trying to come out of the soil sample? When I say water is coming out of the soil sample, then velocity with which the water is coming out of the soil sample is nothing but coefficient of permeability of that particular soil from which the water is coming out into hydraulic gradient. With what hydraulic gradient the flow is coming out of the soil sample? That is nothing but total head difference what I have between upstream when the water is entering into the soil to that of the downstream when the water is coming out of the soil sample. So that total head difference is h by length of seepage. What is that length through which the flow took place through the soil sample means? It's nothing but L. And what is the cross sectional area through which the soil sample water seeped in? That's nothing but A. Capital A here indicates the cross sectional area of the soil sample. Small a here indicates the cross sectional area of the stand pipe in which the water is stored on the upstream side. So whatever rate with which the flow is entering in, the same rate the water has to flow out. That's a continuity condition what I am referring to. So flow rate coming out of the soil sample is nothing but with what flow rate flow is entering into the soil sample, into inlet, and this is nothing but outlet. So from this, if I'm trying to equate these two equations, okay, and what I'll be having is at the outlet, it's nothing but k into h by L into A. At the inlet, it's nothing but minus A into dH by dt. And if I try to segregate my terms of head drop, that is nothing but dH is on one side, h is on the other side. Taking these terms onto one side and dt onto the other side, and subsequent integration if I carry out, just I'm trying to rearrange as like I told you. So I'm just trying to rearrange my terms. In the process of rearranging my terms, what I have is time getting changed from time t1 to t2, whereas your total head difference, what you are referring to, is generally getting changed from h1 to h2. But how did this integral got changed from h2 to h1? Because here you had what is called as a minus symbol. So if that minus is to be taken care of, then integral limits gets changed. Don't worry, sir, I'm confused with what is this indicated here. Don't worry at all. Use the same minus symbol, but with the integral limits going from h1 to h2. Initial head level is h1, final head level is h2. But minus symbol should be used in such case. And with integral, you can see it's only integral dt. So integral dt is nothing but t over the time limits t1 to t2. So where that t1 to t2 integral, if I substitute those limits, I'll be getting it as k into a by L into t2 minus t1. That t2 minus t1 is what I can write it as change in time interval, or over a certain period of time, delta t is what I can write it as t2 minus t1. That's what you could see in this expression. Okay, is equal to the cross sectional area of the standpipe was constant. Okay, so small a is constant. What I have inside the integral is integral dh by h. So if I try to integrate it, I'll be getting it as ln of h over the limits going from h1 to h2, actually with minus symbol. If you are not using minus symbol, then it comes as integral limits of h2 to h1. Okay, so in the form of ln function, if you write down, it's nothing but ln into h1 by h2. In the form of logarithmic to the base 10 function, if I want to write the same expression, it gets realtered as k is equal to ln function when you are converting into log scale with base 10. So you'll be getting what is called as here 2.303 additional terms coming into picture. So coefficient of permeability for the fine grained soil sample. Why I'm saying fine grained soil sample? Because For low permeable soil only, you are trying to conduct this falling head permeability test. So in the case of the falling head permeability test, in which you have used what is called as a low permeable soil for determining the coefficient of permeability. So the expression that we need to use for determining the coefficient of permeability is nothing but K is equal to 2.303 into A into L by A into T into logarithmic to the base 10 H1 by H2, where small a indicates the cross-sectional area of the pipe or the tube, and L indicates the length of the soil sample, or in the other way I can say it's the length of the seepage. Capital A indicates what is the cross-sectional area of the soil sample, and T indicates the time interval over which the flow is what you are looking at, that is happening through the soil sample, and H1 indicates the total head difference, our total head with reference to the chosen datum at time t equal to t1. H2 indicates the total head at time t equal to t2. So how is your total head varying over a time interval of t1 to t2 is what we are looking at, and accordingly we are trying to calculate the coefficient of permeability of the soil from falling head test. And next, as I told you, always it may not be possible for us to conduct the lab tests because of the issues in collecting the undisturbed soil sample, or the issues with regard to the environment that we have got in the lab in conducting the test. So sometimes we will be required even to directly understand the condition of the soil in the field itself. And it is very important and more effective in determining the coefficient of permeability of the soil in the field itself instead of determining it in the lab. Why is it not effective in the case of lab? Because in the case of lab, you will be collecting the soil sample only from certain depth. But when it comes to the case of field, original soil condition, whatever is existing over a depth of 10 meters or 20 meters, all that soil is coming into picture in estimation of the coefficient of permeability of your soil. Okay, so that's the reason why we take into consideration that whatever K value that we can determine for the soil from field test is going to be more realistic when compared to that of what you determine from your lab. Field tests are generally more reliable than the laboratory test for determining soil permeability. The main reason being that field tests are performed on the undisturbed soil samples which are exactly existing in your field. And even in the case of these field tests also, we have got two different types of field tests which we'll be looking at. One is called as confined aquifer test. Basically, both the field tests are nothing but we call them as pumping tests only. Okay, the two respective tests which I am talking about are nothing but pumping tests. Okay, so pumping test, in that pumping test, whether you are dealing with what is called as a confined aquifer or whether you are dealing with what is called as an unconfined aquifer. What do I mean by aquifer? Aquifer is nothing but the strata in which your flow can happen through the soil. It is that layer of the soil strata in which the flow is expected to happen. Whereas in the other layers of the soil strata, maybe you might have a rocky strata or maybe relatively an impervious strata where the relative flow happening through that particular soil strata might be very less or almost negligible. That's the reason we have a difference between the condition of what is called as a confined aquifer existing and unconfined aquifer existing. What is meant by confined aquifer? If your aquifer or the strata in which the flow is happening is confined. Confined, what do I mean by confined? It is embedded between two impervious layers. If you look at here is one impervious layer, here is another impervious layer. This impervious layer could be a rock or anything else. This impervious layer could be a rock, but mostly it could be a clay or something else. Okay, so in such case, we call this aquifer or this particular soil strata to be a confined aquifer. In case on this top side, I do not have any impervious layer, then such kind of condition is what we call it as unconfined aquifer. Okay, so either in this confined aquifer case or unconfined aquifer case, whatever is the case, how do we determine the coefficient of permeability of the soil? So as I told you, it is based on what is called as pumping test. So how do we carry out this pumping test? What do we do in this case of pumping test? First, we will go to the field. we make a borehole into the ground. Borehole in the sense it's a hole which you make inside the ground. This level, what you could see, this level, whatever you could see, is nothing but it is the initial water table position. It's the water table position what you have. So what is it indicating? It is indicating me the initial position of the water table. Now once I make a borehole, what would happen? I'm making a hole into the ground here. Okay, so in the process of making the hole into the ground, what is going to happen is you are removing the soil out. Once you remove the soil out, what would happen? The water from the surroundings starts seeping into that opening, whatever you made into the ground. Okay, so because of which slightly you would start seeing the decrease in the water table position, drawdown in the water table position. And now what we are going to do here is, as it is said to be a pumping method, I'll be continuously pumping the water out from that particular borehole that I made. Because of the bore, whatever I have made, water can be extracted out. In the process, when you are trying to extract the water out, what is going to happen with regard to the water table position? So initially water table was like this, but later what you could see is there is a drawdown in the water table position. Why is the drawdown is happening in the water table position? Because the water is continuously being removed out of that borehole. Okay, what I made the borehole, water got collected, I am pumping out that water from the borehole. In the process, when I am continuously pumping out the water from the borehole, water from the surrounding region start flowing into your borehole. Now, what is my ultimate objective? Ultimate objective is to calculate the coefficient of permeability. Coefficient of permeability of which soil? The soil in which the flow is happening. Which is that soil in which flow is happening? Your aquifer. Now, I am trying to determine the coefficient of permeability of your aquifer layer there. How I am trying to determine? By making a borehole, I am allowing the water to enter into the borehole, and whatever the water that got entered into the borehole, I am trying to pump it out. Okay. Now, if you can look at here, there are, apart from the borehole what you have made, there are other two holes that you could see, one here and the other here, which we are going to be calling them as observation wells. Now, what is the purpose of these observation wells? These observation wells are nothing but small diameter holes only, again, which you are making into the ground. What is the purpose of that observation wells mean? To understand how is the head level, how is the water level, how is the water surface level, water table level, is trying to change from one place to the other place. I repeat, how is the water table level at one place varying from the other place. So from the center of the borehole that you made, from the center of this borehole, let's say at a radial distance R1, I have the center of your borehole 1. R1 here indicates the radial distance at which your center of the borehole 1 is existing, center of your observation well 1 existing. And R2 is nothing but, it's the radial distance. Yeah, this is that R2 what I am talking about. R2 here is nothing but the radial distance from the center of your borehole, at what radial distance the center of your second observation well is existing. Okay, this and this are nothing but we call them as observation wells. Okay, so let's say at time t equal to something, the water level in the observation well 1, or water table position in the observation well 1 is up to H1, whereas the water table level in the observation well 2 is up to a head of H2. Why is that head difference is there? Because your observation well 1 is nearer to the borehole that you made. So water from that near region easily enters into your borehole at a faster rate when compared to that of the water which is relatively at a far away distance, because the water from the far away distance starts slowly coming into your borehole. Okay, but whereas the water from the adjacent areas of the borehole will initially enters into the borehole. So that's the reason why the head available near to your observation well is H1, which is less than that of the head available at a far away distance, that is at a radial distance of R2, the head available is H2, which is where H2 is relatively higher than that of your H1. Now, my objective is once again to calculate the coefficient of permeability of the soil. Now, how do I calculate the coefficient of permeability? Let me start writing down from the basic fundamental again. So, flow rate is what I can write it as K into I into A, where K into I is nothing but the velocity with which the flow is happening. into the borehole through the soil. A is nothing but the cross-sectional area of the soil sample, what is available through which the flow can enter into your borehole. I repeat, the cross-sectional area of, if I consider this to be my borehole, okay, till here it is my aquifer, above this it is an impervious layer, below this it is an impervious layer. Water can flow only through this aquifer strata into the borehole, not through this region. If the water is trying to flow only through this aquifer strata, what is this area, surface area available, or what is the region that is relatively available around the borehole, which is being impacted because of this particular borehole, whatever is made. Okay, so that area, that surface area through which the flow is entering into the borehole is what we'll try to write it as your cross-sectional area through which the flow is happening. Here, what is the total cross-sectional area through which the flow is happening means it is the complete surface area what is available through which the flow is taking place. So K is something what we are trying to look at in calculating. Okay, this is what I wanted to calculate. And next is hydraulic gradient. How do we write down hydraulic gradient? Hydraulic gradient is what I can write it as head loss between one point to other point divided by the respective corresponding length of seepage. Okay. Hydraulic gradient can also be defined as the slope of your water surface, free flowing water surface. That's nothing but it is a slope of your water table, the drawdown here what I am referring to. So the slope of that drawdown water surface is itself, I can also write it as your hydraulic gradient. Okay, so that hydraulic gradient value, how I am writing down means it's nothing but delta H, or I can also write it as DH when I want to go for your differential parameter. For a radial distance, when the water is trying to, in the observation well to that of the observation well 1 to 2, for a radial variation of, let's say, dr distance, the corresponding drop in the water level is, let's say, something dh. Okay, for some small radial variation of dr, let's say, I'm just looking at from one point to the other point in the radial direction. For this small dr distance, the head level, whatever you could see here, this particular point to this particular point. So this head drop, whatever we have got between these 2 points, is nothing but what I am writing it as here dh. Okay, this head drop is what I am writing it as dh. For a radial distance, what I am looking at is dr. So that slope of the curve, this particular slope of the curve, yeah, this is that curve what I am looking at. So the slope of this curve is nothing but we call it as your hydraulic gradient. So that slope is nothing but small vertical variation to that of a small radial variation, dh by dr is what is represented into the cross-sectional area through which the flow is entering into that borehole. So what is the cross-sectional area through which the water is entering into the borehole? It's nothing but the surface area whatever is available. So what radial distance has got an impact means it's nothing but 2 pi r is the surface, okay, into what is the height from which the flow is happening. Height from which the flow is happening is only your aquifer height. So if you can look back, so only through the height of the aquifer only the flow is going to happen through into your borewell or the borehole that you have made. Okay, so once I understand what is my expression for flow rate, then my objective is to rewrite all the terms according to its own arrangement and then determine what is your K value from the integration process. So I'll take your dr terms onto one side and all your dh terms or any other terms onto one side and then carry out the integration. When the radial distance is varying from r1 to r2, the subsequent variation in the head level is from h1 to h2, or in the other way, when the radial distance is varying from r2 to r1, the subsequent variation in your head levels in the observation well 2 to 1 is h2 to h1. So you can go for integrals going from r1 to r2 where the corresponding head levels in the observation wells going from h1 to h2, or in the other way, r2 to r1 where head levels in the observation wells going from h2 to h1. Okay. And if I try to carry out my integration, so integral dr by r, where flow rate is a constant value, it's you can take it out of the integral function, and integral dr by r is nothing but ln of r, where the limits going from r1 to r2 is what I have represented here, q into ln into r2 by r1 is equal to 2 is constant, pi is constant, coefficient of permeability of that particular soil in which the flow is happening is constant. We are assuming a homogeneous isotropic soil, and h height of the aquifer is constant. And here, if you look at what is this, don't assume D is separate, H is separate. So it's nothing but DH, okay, both together. Okay, so 2 pi kh, everything can be taken out. What I'll have inside the integral is dh. Integral dh is nothing but h varying over the limits h1 to h2. Okay, so that's what is my expression that I am going to be getting. And this integral function, this expression, whatever I have got in terms of ln function, if I convert it into logarithmic function, what I'll additionally get here is 2.303 into q into log of r2 by r1 to the base 10. That's how I can try to rewrite my ln function in terms of your logarithmic function. And ultimately, my objective is to rewrite this expression according to what is that you wanted to calculate. So basically, I wanted to calculate the coefficient of permeability of the soil, that aquifer strata in which the flow is happening. So that k value is what I can get from this expression. Okay, so yeah. This is the k value what I am going to be getting after rewriting your expression. So you can have this expression represented either as an ln function or rewrite it as your logarithmic function. If you are rewriting it as logarithmic function, you will have 2.303 additionally coming into picture. So you have to be little careful. Don't just blindly compare the expression what is given here and in the textbook. Some books will have the function represented in logarithmic scale. Some will have the way of representing only in your ln scale. And next, in the case of an unconfined aquifer, what does this unconfined aquifer mean? That so-called aquifer, what you are looking at, is confined on one side, but not on the other side. Such kind of aquifer is what we call it as unconfined aquifer. Here, if you look at, this strata is an impervious strata, but whereas on the top side of it, you don't have any impervious strata. So it's completely what we call it as this particular aquifer, whatever we have here is called as and unconfined. It's not confined between two impervious layers. That is what it is. Okay. So now same story again. Borehole. This is the initial position of the water table. This is the initial position of the water table. You made a borehole into the ground. Water started to seep into that borehole, and in order to understand what are your head levels existing in the nearby soil region, you are trying to make two observation wells to understand how the water levels in those observation wells are varying over time. Okay, so everything is same, whatever we are writing is same, but only one thing is that previously the cross-sectional area what is available for water to enter in to the borehole was represented as surface area into height. Okay, surface area we were representing it as 2 pi r. Height was h, where height of the aquifer was fixed. The height of your confined aquifer was fixed. But here in the case of the unconfined aquifer, the height of the soil strata through which the flow enters into the borehole continuously changes over time. Why is it continuously changing over time? Maybe after 1 hour, water surface might be somewhere here. After 2 hours, the water surface might reach here. After 3 hours, the water surface might reach here. After 4 hours, the water surface might have reached here. So what is happening is the height or the cross-sectional height of the soil sample through which the flow is entering into the soil is continuously changing. Okay, so that's the reason why whenever you are going to be writing the height of the aquifer through which the flow is happening, that height is not a constant height. Okay, so that is going to be a varying height. So that is what you are additionally required to be careful with. So this is the height what I am talking about. Okay, so this I am not directly writing it as capital H. It is something, some height where that height of soil strata what is available through which the water can enter into the borehole is continuously changing. That's what it is very important for you to note. Otherwise, everything remains the same. All the complete expression, derivation part, everything is going to be the same. Yeah, everything is same. But earlier in the previous expression, here instead of small h, you had capital H, where the height of the aquifer was fixed. Confined aquifer, it was a fixed value. But here in the case of the unconfined aquifer, the height of that aquifer strata, which is allowing the water to seep into the borehole, is not constant because it is changing with change in time. Okay, so that's the reason why here h is also a variable function, and 2 is constant inside this integral on the right side. 2 is constant, pi is constant, k is constant. But what is variable here is h into dh is what is to be integrated for. Integral h dh is nothing but h square by 2. That 2, this 2 gets cancelled. So h square over the limits h1 to h2. If I substitute, I'll be getting this expression upon integration. And what I wanted to calculate is k value. So k is what I can rewrite as this expression. So once again, this expression is in terms of the function ln of r2 by r1. If you want in terms of logarithmic, then you have to multiply this with 2.303. So my expression for k comes out to be 2.303 into q into log r2 by r1 to the base 10 divided by completely pi into h2 square minus h1 square. So that becomes my expression for determining the coefficient of permeability of the soil in the case of unconfined aquifer. In the case of confined aquifer, we have seen earlier. In the case of unconfined aquifer, we can calculate based on this test. So apart from this, what lab tests and field tests that we have talked about, we have also certainly said there are some other indirect approaches by which you can determine the coefficient of permeability, like from either empirical relations or maybe from your consolidation test. Okay, even from consolidation test also you can try to determine the coefficient of permeability of the soil. And for which soil we are trying to determine this coefficient of permeability? It is for fully saturated soil only. Even in the case of your partially saturated soil also, we can try to go ahead in calculating the coefficient of permeability, but basically not from this particular test. Okay, I'll stop my discussion for today here, and we'll continue our discussion in the next class with the topic what is called as capillary rise.